Too scared to look at me now. The cadet's voice rang out cocky and cruel as he held the fake pistol to her head. Around him, a dozen young men in uniform burst into laughter, egging him on, their voices bouncing off the walls of the training yard. But she didn't blink, didn't move. Her jaw was set, her eyes forward, not a flicker of fear on her face, just complete, suffocating silence. And that made them laugh even harder. "Come on, she's frozen," one of them shouted. "I thought SEALs were supposed to be tough," another added. The one with the training gun leaned in close. "Look at her. All that training and she can't even handle a joke." But what none of them knew, what they were seconds away from learning, is that she wasn't frozen. She was calculating. The Chesapeake Naval Academy stood as a monument to American military tradition, its white stone buildings gleaming under the Virginia sun. For generations, it had produced officers who led with integrity and courage. But something had changed in recent years. Reports of declining discipline, of arrogance replacing honor, had reached the highest levels of command. That's why Commander Catherine Kate Blackwood had been sent here. Her assignment: observe, evaluate, and identify weaknesses, all while keeping her true identity concealed. No rank insignia adorned her shoulder, no decorations on her chest. To these cadets, she was just another advisor, easily dismissed and even more easily mocked. At 42, Kate had seen more combat than most senior officers. 15 years in naval special warfare. The first female SEAL commander to lead classified operations in 2 separate war zones. 8 medals that she never wore. A file so heavily redacted that half the instructors at the academy wouldn't recognize her name if they saw it. But Admiral James Harrington knew exactly who she was. At 68, the Cold War veteran had handpicked her for this mission. "There's a cancer growing at Chesapeake," he had told her a week earlier, his weathered face grave as they stood in his office, overlooking the Potomac. "We're seeing patterns of behavior that would get men killed in the field." Kate had nodded, studying the academy reports spread across his desk. "Why send me in covert? Why not just inspect them officially?" Harrington's eyes, still sharp despite his age, had locked with hers. "Because they'll put on a show for an official inspection. I need someone who can see them when they think no one's watching." He paused, a ghost of a smile crossing his face. "Besides, your reputation tends to precede you these days, Commander." Kate had accepted the assignment with a single nod. Just before she left, Harrington had asked the question she'd been waiting for. "Your son is at Chesapeake. James, isn't it? He goes by his father's last name, Blackwood. He doesn't want special treatment." "Oh, will that be a problem?" Kate's expression hadn't changed. "My son knows how to take care of himself. He doesn't need privileges." What she didn't say was that she hadn't seen James in nearly 6 months. Their last conversation had ended in strained silence, the way too many had lately. She'd missed his 22nd birthday while on a classified operation. One of many milestones sacrificed to duty. For 5 days, Kate had observed in silence. She watched training exercises, took notes, and blended into the background. The cadets barely acknowledged her presence, except for occasional smirks or dismissive glances. Lieutenant Alexander Lex Mitchell ran the elite Alpha Squad, the Academy's top cadets. At 37, the former Marine from Operation Desert Storm carried himself with the supreme confidence of a man who had never questioned his own judgment. When Kate entered the training yard that first day, Mitchell had given her a once-over that said everything without a word. "What could you possibly teach us?" His protege, Thomas Ryan, was cut from the same cloth, tall, powerfully built, with the kind of good looks that had probably opened doors his entire life. His father was William Ryan, CEO of Ryan Defense, one of the largest private military contractors in the country. The arrogance that radiated from the young man was palpable, infecting the entire squad. Kate saw their flaws immediately. Their tactical formations were textbook but rigid, lacking the adaptability needed in actual combat. They relied too heavily on strength rather than strategy. And worst of all, they treated simulated life and death scenarios like games to be won rather than lessons to be learned. On the 3rd day, Kate witnessed Ryan body check a smaller cadet during a close quarters exercise, sending him sprawling across the floor. "Too slow, Matthews," Ryan had laughed as the cadet struggled to his feet. Mitchell had seen it too and done nothing. That night, Kate accessed the academy records, discovering 3 formal complaints against Ryan in the past year, all mysteriously resolved without consequence. She encrypted her findings and sent them to Harrington using a secure channel In a Cold War-era code they both knew from his training days, Oscar Lima. Old school but effective. His response was immediate. Continue observation, need undeniable proof of problem. She would get her proof sooner than either of them expected. The morning of the sixth day brought firearms training. The cadets assembled in the yard, each equipped with rubber M9 training pistols, standard Navy issue, and Miles gear, multiple integrated laser engagement system, sophisticated equipment that registered hits during combat simulations. Mitchell stood before them demonstrating proper stance and grip. Remember, gentlemen, these might be rubber, but treat them as live weapons. Habit builds discipline. Kate stood at the edge of the yard, clipboard in hand, noting the inconsistencies in Mitchell's instruction compared to current SEAL protocols. The rubber pistols looked and felt like the real thing, designed to build muscle memory without the risk of live fire. The cadets broke into pairs for drills, moving with the choreographed precision of men who had practiced extensively but never faced genuine danger. Their movements were too wide, too theatrical. In real combat, such flourishes would get them killed. As the session progressed, Kate felt the weight of attention shifting toward her. Ryan and three other cadets kept glancing her way, exchanging smirks. She recognized the look she'd seen it her entire career. The look of men who believed a woman had no place in their world. The training session ended, but as the cadets began to disperse, Ryan and his circle lingered. Kate continued making notes, seemingly oblivious to their approach. She heard them before she saw them. Low chuckles, muttered comments just loud enough for her to catch fragments. Probably some diversity hire. Never seen real action. Then Ryan was standing before her, his 6'3" frame casting a shadow across her notepad. His fellow cadets formed a loose semicircle around them. Got some feedback for us, ma'am? Ryan's voice dripped with false courtesy. Kate looked up, her face impassive. I'm just observing, cadet. You've been observing for a week now. Silent as a ghost. Ryan tilted his head, studying her with exaggerated curiosity. Makes us wonder why they'd send someone like you to evaluate us. Kate held his gaze without responding, which seemed to irritate him more than any retort could have. Ryan's hand moved to the rubber pistol, still holstered at his hip. You know how to use one of these, ma'am, or do advisors just watch from the sidelines? The circle tightened slightly. From the corner of her eye, Kate noticed one cadet taller than the others, hanging back with a troubled expression. James, her son. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second, and she saw the conflict there, the silent plea for her not to make a scene. Too late for that. Ryan drew the rubber pistol with practiced smoothness, a motion that would have impressed anyone who hadn't disarmed actual terrorists. In one fluid movement, he raised it and pressed the muzzle against Kate's temple. Too scared to look at me now. His voice rang out cocky and cruel. Around him, the cadets burst into laughter, egging him on, their voices bouncing off the walls of the training yard. But Kate didn't blink, didn't move. Her jaw was set, her eyes forward, not a flicker of fear on her face, just complete suffocating silence. And that made them laugh even harder. Come on, she's frozen, one of them shouted. I thought SEALs were supposed to be tough, another added. Ryan leaned in close, his breath warm against her cheek. Look at her, all that training and she can't even handle a joke. But what none of them knew, what they were seconds away from learning, is that Kate wasn't frozen. She was calculating. In 15 years of combat operations, Commander Blackwood had learned that the most dangerous moment wasn't when the bullets started flying. It was the millisecond before, when your brain had to decide between hesitation and action. She had trained away hesitation long ago. Kate moved in a blur of speed so fast it knocked the air out of the crowd. She stepped back, twisted her body, and drove her elbow into Ryan's wrist. The gun dropped. Before it even hit the ground, she'd swept his legs out, spun him face down, and had a knee pressed into the center of his back. His arm twisted behind him in a position so painful it made him yelp like a kicked dog. Still think this is a game, she said, her voice sharp as steel. The yard went dead silent. The other cadets stared frozen. One dropped his water bottle. Another took a step back without realizing it. They were trained to respect rank, to memorize procedures. But this was real. This was war born into movement. Every inch of her posture screamed lived experience. She stood slowly, letting Ryan scramble to his feet, humiliated and speechless. Then Kate turned and faced the group. That was a rubber gun, she said, her voice low but carrying across the silent yard. If it were real, you'd be scraping your buddy's brains off your boots. She took a step toward them, and despite themselves, several cadets shifted backward. You laugh at discipline. You mock your duty. Her eyes swept over each face, lingering on none. But you forget something. Our enemies don't play games. No one dared speak. She took another step forward. You think this uniform is a costume? You think service is a punchline? The intensity in her voice made it seem to vibrate in the air between them. I buried 6 brothers who wore it better than any of you ever will, and they didn't die so children could play soldier and mock the people who actually lived it. Now the cadets were shifting uncomfortably. The laughter had long since died. The silence wasn't awkward. It was reverent. One of the younger cadets finally whispered, "Commander, we didn't know who you were." She nodded. "You weren't supposed to, but I did expect you to respect the uniform no matter who was in it." Another cadet, the tallest James, finally stepped forward. His face was a mixture of shame and pride as he looked at the woman who had raised him. "Mom, I'm sorry," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion behind it. "We were wrong, all of us." The revelation rippled through the group. Whispers broke out. Eyes widened as they realized they had been mocking the mother of one of their own, and not just any mother. Kate held her son's gaze for a long moment, then softened almost imperceptibly. "You want to make it right?" she asked, addressing all of them now. "Start by learning something that can't be taught in any manual. Respect is earned through humility, not noise. You're not here to impress anyone. You're here to earn the right to stand beside people you trust with your life." The rest of the cadets nodded slowly. No one laughed. Now no one dared, because in 5 seconds, they had gone from mocking a stranger to realizing they had disrespected a legend. The heavy metal door to the yard swung open with a creak, and Admiral James Harrington stepped into the sunlight. Despite his age, he carried himself with the ramrod posture of a man half his years. His weathered face broke into a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes as he surveyed the scene. "I see Commander Blackwood has made your acquaintance," he said, his voice carrying the weight of decades of command. The cadets stiffened to attention instinctively. Harrington approached Kate, speaking just loudly enough for the nearest cadets to hear. "I take it you've found what we were looking for, Commander." "Just scratching the surface, sir," Kate replied. Ryan stood with his shoulders slumped, the burning humiliation on his face now mixed with genuine fear as he realized the magnitude of his mistake. He had put a gun training or not to the head of one of the most decorated special operators in the Navy, a woman hand-selected by Admiral Harrington himself. Mitchell appeared at the yard entrance, taking in the scene with confusion that quickly morphed into concern. His eyes darted from Kate to Harrington, to the subdued cadets, and finally to Ryan's still reddening face. "Admiral," he began, "I wasn't aware we were expecting you today." "Clearly," Harrington replied dryly. As the Admiral led the cadets and Mitchell away for what would undoubtedly be an uncomfortable conversation, Kate found herself alone with James for the first time since her arrival. They stood in awkward silence, mother and son separated by more than just a few feet between them. "You could have told me you were coming," James finally said, his voice low. Kate studied her son's face, seeing so much of his father there, the same determined jawline, the same eyes that couldn't quite hide their emotions. "Would it have changed anything?" she asked. James looked away. "They're not bad guys, Mom. Not really. Just young, arrogant, dangerous," Kate finished for him. "I've seen it before. Men who think war is like the movies until they hear the first real bullet pass their ear." "Ryan's the worst of them," James admitted. "His father's money and connections make him untouchable, or so he thinks." Kate raised an eyebrow. "No one's untouchable, James, not even Orion." Her son almost smiled at that, a glimpse of the boy who had once looked at her with unquestioning admiration before adolescence, and her long deployments had built walls between them. "Why didn't you stop them?" she asked quietly. "When they approached me, you knew what they were planning." James's face tightened. "I wanted to, but I also knew you could handle yourself." He hesitated. "And I wanted them to see you for who you really are." Kate felt a complex emotion rise in her chest, pride in her son's faith in her, mixed with sadness that he had needed to see his friends humbled in such a way. "Your father would have been proud of you," she said. The mention of Robert Blackwood hung in the air between them. Captain Robert Blackwood, killed in Operation Iraqi Freedom, when James was just 9 years old, a hero who had never seen his son grow into the man he'd become. James swallowed hard. I use his name because I want to earn it on my own terms, not because I'm the son of Commander Kate Black, the woman who broke the seal barrier. I understand that better than you think, Kate replied. She had spent her entire career proving herself fighting for every inch of respect. But that doesn't excuse what happened here today. James nodded, accepting the rebuke. It won't happen again. Not with me, anyway. Before they could say more, Mitchell approached his face, a carefully composed mask of professional courtesy. Commander, he said with a stiff nod to Kate, the Admiral would like to see both of you in his office, immediately. As they walked across the yard, Kate noticed how the other cadets watched them pass. The same men who had laughed at her minutes ago now looked at her with a mixture of fear, respect, and curiosity. She recognized the look. She'd seen it her entire career every time she proved herself to men who had underestimated her. The difference was, this time her son was watching too. Admiral Harrington's temporary office at the Academy had been hastily prepared for his unexpected visit. Despite this, it radiated the same authority as his permanent office in Washington, perhaps because the man himself brought that authority with him wherever he went. He sat behind the desk, reviewing a file with his reading glasses perched low on his nose. When Kate and James entered, he removed the glasses and gestured to the chairs opposite him. Sit, he said simply. Once they were seated, Harrington leaned back, studying them both. Well, Commanders, I'd say you've completed the first phase of your evaluation more thoroughly than either of us anticipated. Sir, Kate began. I should report that Harrington held up a hand. I've already heard from Lieutenant Mitchell. Quite an enlightening conversation. His eyes crinkled slightly at the corners, the closest he came to expressing amusement. He seems to believe you might have overreacted to a harmless training exercise. Kate remained silent, knowing Harrington well enough to let him finish. I informed him, the Admiral continued, that if any of my men had put a weapon training or otherwise to the head of a superior officer during my time in the teams, they would have been swimming with concrete boots by nightfall. He turned his attention to James. Cadet Blackwood, what do you have to say for yourself? James sat straight, his gaze fixed forward. No excuse, sir. I failed to intervene when I should have. And why didn't you? James hesitated, glancing briefly at his mother. Because I wanted them to learn the lesson, sir. They needed to see what real capability looks like. Harrington's eyebrows rose slightly. He looked at Kate. Like mother, like son, a penchant for teaching hard lessons. He stood and walked to the window, looking out over the academy grounds. For a moment, he seemed lost in thought, perhaps remembering his own days as a young officer. The problem at Chesapeake goes deeper than a few arrogant cadets, he finally said. We've detected a pattern of declining standards of corners being cut, of influence replacing merit. He turned back to face them. And possibly something worse. Kate straightened in her chair. Worse, sir, intelligence suggests sensitive training protocols are being leaked from the academy, possibly sold to private military contractors or even foreign interests. James looked stunned. Espionage at Chesapeake. We don't use that word lightly, Cadet, Harrington replied. But yes, that's what we're investigating. He returned to his desk and slid a folder toward Kate. Commander, your cover is effectively blown, but that might work to our advantage now. As of this moment, you are officially taking over training for Alpha Squad. Lieutenant Mitchell will assist you, but you have full authority. Kate opened the folder, scanning the official orders inside. And my son, sir, Mom. Harrington's gaze moved between them. Cadet Blackwood remains with the squad. No special treatment, as I'm sure you both prefer. His weathered face softened slightly. Besides, the best way to protect him now is to keep him close. If someone is compromising this academy, all cadets are potentially at risk. James straightened. I don't need protection, sir. Everyone needs protection, sometimes, son, Harrington replied, his voice carrying the weight of experience. Even SEALs. The Admiral stood, signaling the end of the meeting. Commander, I expect daily reports. The regular security protocols have been compromised, so we'll use the old methods. He tapped his desk twice. Moscow rules. Kate nodded, recognizing the reference to the Cold War-era CIA guidelines for operating in hostile territory. Harrington was showing his age and his caution. Dismissed, Cadet Harrington said to James, who stood saluted crisply and left the room after one last glance at his mother. When the door closed, Harrington's formal demeanor relaxed slightly. He's the spitting image of Robert. In more ways than one, Kate replied softly. Stubborn, principled. Those aren't bad qualities in our line of work. Harrington sat back down heavily. Kate, there's something else you should know. This investigation, it's personal for me. Kate waited, sensing the shift in Harrington's tone. I think Victor Orloff might be involved. The name hit Kate like a physical blow. Orloff, the former KGB operative that Harrington had faced off against in Berlin during the last days of the Cold War. The man who had lost an arm in their final confrontation and sworn vengeance. Orloff is dead, Kate said carefully. According to every intelligence report. Intelligence reports can be wrong, Harrington cut in. There have been digital fingerprints encryption methods that only a handful of people ever knew. Old Soviet techniques that I haven't seen since the wall came down. He leaned forward. If I'm right, this isn't just about selling training protocols. It's about undermining the next generation of American naval officers. Kate absorbed this, her mind already calculating the implications. Why not bring in counterintelligence naval criminal investigative service? Because bureaucracy moves slowly, and if there's even a chance I'm right about Orloff, we don't have time for committees and approvals. Harrington's eyes were intense. You and I are the only ones who know the full picture, and I need someone I can trust completely. Kate nodded once, understanding the weight of what he was asking. What about Mitchell? Do you suspect him? Mitchell is a good sailor but a mediocre leader. He's created a culture of arrogance because it's all he knows. But a spy, I don't think so. Harrington sighed. No, I'm more concerned about outside influences, like William Ryan and his defense contracting empire. Thomas Ryan's father, Kate said, pieces clicking into place. Yes, Ryan Defense has been trying to secure the contract for our new combat training systems for years. Imagine how valuable inside information would be to them. Kate stood, her decision made. I'll start with Alpha Squad tomorrow morning, complete restructuring of their training program. Mitchell won't like that. A rare smile crossed Kate's face. With respect, Admiral, that's counting in my favor. As she turned to leave, Harrington called after her. Kate, be careful. If Orloff is involved, he won't have forgotten Berlin. And he's had 30 years to plan his revenge. Kate paused at the door. The Cold War is over, sir. Harrington's face was grim. For some of us, Commander, it never ended. It just went underground, waiting for the right moment to resurface. As Kate left the office, she felt the weight of the mission settling on her shoulders. What had begun as a simple evaluation had evolved into something far more dangerous and far more personal. Her son was caught in the middle of it, and an old enemy might be pulling strings from the shadows. But danger was nothing new to Commander Catherine Blackwood. She had built her career by walking into the fire while others fled. This time would be no different. Except this time, her son's future hung in the balance too. That night, as darkness fell over Chesapeake Naval Academy, Thomas Ryan sat alone in his dormitory room, his hands shaking slightly as he typed on a secure laptop. The message was brief: situation compromised. Black Widow has arrived. The response came almost immediately. Proceed as planned. Accelerate timeline. Ryan closed the laptop and stared out the window at the academy grounds, now silent under the moonlight. He thought of his father's expectations, of the humiliation he had suffered today, of the path he had chosen. There would be no turning back now. That day changed the trajectory of the entire training class. 1 week later, the transformation was unmistakable. From that moment on, drills were sharper. Discipline returned. The cadets now moved with purpose instead of swagger. They started calling her mom with sincerity, not mockery. They no longer asked who she was. Instead, they focused on who they needed to become. Commander Catherine Blackwood stood at the edge of the training yard, watching Alpha Squad execute a complex breach in clear exercise. Her trained eye caught every movement, every decision. The cadets cleared each corner with methodical precision, their rubber M4 carbines sweeping the training structure with proper muzzle discipline. Lieutenant Mitchell observed alongside her, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. They're finally using proper entry techniques, Kate noted. But Ryan's still telegraphing his movements. Mitchell's jaw tightened slightly. He's one of our best marksmen. Marksmanship means nothing if you're dead before you can pull the trigger. For 5 days, Kate had completely restructured Alpha Squad's training regimen. Gone were the predictable drills and comfortable routines. In their place, she had implemented the Shark Tank, a modified version of the DevGru training protocol used by SEAL Team 6. Every day brought new challenges designed to break predictable patterns and force adaptive thinking. Mitchell had resisted at first, claiming her methods were too extreme for cadets. But Admiral Harrington's orders had been clear. Commander Blackwood had full authority. The lieutenant had no choice but to comply. 2 minutes remaining, Kate called out. Hostage extraction point is compromised. Adapt. Inside the training structure, the cadets exchanged quick glances. This was an unexpected twist. Kate's specialty. James took lead, gesturing toward a side window rather than continuing toward the planned extraction point. Ryan hesitated, clearly wanting to challenge the decision, then reluctantly followed. Kate noticed the momentary power struggle. The tension between her son and Ryan had grown more pronounced with each passing day. Professional rivalry tinged with personal animosity, a dangerous combination in the field. Time's up, Kate announced as the last cadet climbed through the window. Everyone gather up. The cadets assembled before her, breathing heavily from exertion, but standing tall. Their eyes were different now, alert, focused, respectful. Kate had earned that respect not by demanding it, but by showing them exactly what they lacked. Better, she acknowledged, but better gets you a nice funeral with a flag-draped coffin. I need perfect. She walked along the line, addressing individual performance. When she reached Ryan, she paused. Your hesitation at the extraction point change could have cost Loiswa. Why did you pause? Ryan's face flushed, but his voice remained steady. I disagreed with the alternate route, assessment commander. Then voice it, discuss it, but don't stand there contemplating while bullets could be flying, Kate replied. In combat, a bad decision executed immediately and unanimously is often better than a perfect plan executed with hesitation. Ryan nodded stiffly. Yes, Commander. Kate completed her review, then dismissed the squad for afternoon physical training. As the cadets dispersed, Mitchell approached her. A word, Commander. His tone was carefully neutral. They moved away from the training area toward the administration building. Mitchell waited until they were out of earshot before speaking. Your methods are getting results, he admitted reluctantly, but there's concern about their sustainability. Kate raised an eyebrow. Whose concern? Dean Marshall believes we're pushing too hard. These are cadets, not active duty SEALs. These cadets will lead men into combat zones within a year of graduation, Kate countered. The enemy won't care about their tender feelings. Mitchell's professional facade cracked slightly. This isn't just about training methods, is it? This is about what happened that first date, about Ryan. Kate stopped walking and faced him directly. Lieutenant, let me be very clear. What happened that day was a symptom of a cultural problem that you allowed to develop. These young men were being trained to believe they're untouchable, that rules don't apply to them. That gets people killed in the real world. Mitchell started to respond, then seemed to reconsider. His eyes shifted, focusing on something over Kate's shoulder. She turned to see Admiral Harrington approaching, accompanied by a tall, distinguished man in an expensive suit that screamed civilian. Commander Blackwood, Harrington called out. A moment, please. Kate approached and saluted. Admiral? At ease, Harrington said. He gestured to the civilian beside him. This is William Ryan, CEO of Ryan Defense. He's here for a demonstration of our training protocols. The emphasis Harrington placed on the words told Kate everything she needed to know. This was Thomas Ryan's father, and a person of significant interest in their investigation. William Ryan extended his hand. His grip was firm, his smile practiced, the polished exterior of a man accustomed to power. Commander Blackwood, your reputation precedes you. Quite the trailblazer, aren't you? There was something in his tone, a subtle condescension beneath the veneer of respect. Kate had heard it countless times throughout her career. I just do the job, Mr. Ryan, she replied evenly. Ryan's smile didn't waver. Of course, I understand my son is in your training squad. I hope he's measuring up to expectations. Your son is talented, Kate said diplomatically. He's making progress. Ryan nodded, seemingly satisfied with this assessment. Excellent. I've always pushed Thomas to excel. The Ryan name comes with certain expectations. Harrington interjected smoothly. Mr. Ryan's company is developing next-generation training systems for the Navy. He's here to observe current methodologies. Kate caught the Admiral's subtle signal. Keep him talking. Learn what you can. Our current training could certainly benefit from technological advancement, Kate offered. What specifically is Ryan Defense working on? Ryan's eyes lit up with practiced enthusiasm. Integrated virtual reality combat simulators with neural feedback components. Imagine training that feels real without any physical danger. We could simulate any combat environment from urban Tehran to the mountains of North Korea. Impressive, Kate said, though in my experience, nothing replaces the stress of actual physical training. That's the old way of thinking, Ryan replied with casual dismissiveness. The future of military training is digital, clean, efficient. War isn't clean, Kate said simply. An awkward silence fell. Ryan's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Harrington cleared his throat. Mr. Ryan will be observing afternoon exercises. Commander, please continue with your scheduled training. Lieutenant Mitchell can act as Mr. Ryan's guide. Kate nodded, understanding the dismissal. As she turned to leave, Ryan called after her. Commander, I'd appreciate it if you didn't mention my visit to Thomas. I prefer to surprise him. Kate acknowledged this with a nod, but made no promises. As she walked away, she could feel Ryan's eyes on her back, calculating, assessing. The encounter left her with an uneasy feeling. There was something predatory about William Ryan, something that went beyond typical corporate ambition. She needed to talk to her son. Finding James proved difficult. He wasn't at physical training with the rest of the squad. Kate finally located him in the small memorial garden at the academy's eastern edge, a quiet place where few cadets ventured. He sat on a stone bench staring at the bronze plaque bearing his father's name among other fallen graduates. Kate approached quietly, but James sensed her presence. Years of being raised by a SEAL had sharpened his awareness. He died when I was 9, James said without turning. I have memories, but they're starting to fade. Sometimes I can't remember exactly what his voice sounded like. Kate sat beside her son, her eyes fixed on Robert's name. Captain Robert Blackwood, U.S. Navy SEAL, 1971-2009. Her husband, James's father, a ghost that had shaped both their lives. He had a deep laugh, she said softly. It came from his chest. You couldn't help smiling when you heard it. James nodded, absorbing this detail like a precious gift. I remember him teaching me to swim. He wouldn't let me use floaties. Said Blackwood's learn the hard way or not at all. A small smile touched Kate's lips. That sounds like him. They sat in silence for a moment, this rare moment of peace between them, fragile and precious. Your friend, Ryan, Kate finally said. How well do you know him? James's expression hardened. He's not my friend. We're in the same squad. His father is here, observing training. James turned to her, surprise evident on his face. William Ryan here. That's unusual. You've met him before. Once at a donor event. James searched for the right word. Intense. Thomas is always trying to impress him, but nothing's ever good enough. Kate considered this. Does Ryan ever discuss his father's business, Ryan Defense? James gave her a searching look. Is this Commander Blackwood asking, or my mother? Both, Kate admitted. James sighed. Thomas brags sometimes about classified projects his father lets him see. Combat simulators, drone systems. He implied once that his father had access to training protocols before they were officially released. Kate kept her expression neutral, despite the significance of this revelation. Has he ever asked you about my work? My missions? He doesn't know you're my mother, or didn't until that day. James paused. But he has asked about SEAL tactics, equipment specifications. I assumed it was just the usual cadet stuff. Everyone wants to know about the teams. Kate nodded slowly. If he asks again, tell me. James studied his mother's face. What's going on, Mom? This isn't just about fixing discipline problems, is it? Before Kate could decide how much to reveal, her secure phone vibrated. A text from Harrington, my office now. I have to go, she said, standing. We'll talk later. James caught her hand, a gesture so unexpected it stopped her in her tracks. Be careful around Ryan, he said quietly. Both of them. Kate squeezed his hand once, then released it. Always am. As she walked away, the weight of everything unsaid hung between them. Kate wanted to tell her son about the investigation, about the potential danger. But operational security demanded discretion, even with family. Especially with family. Some burdens a commander carried alone. Admiral Harrington's temporary office had been transformed in the weeks since his arrival. Maps covered one wall. A secure communications station occupied the corner. The room now resembled a tactical operations center more than an administrative office. Kate found Harrington bent over satellite imagery spread across his desk. He looked up as she entered, his weathered face grave. "Close the door," he ordered. Kate complied, then stood at ease before the desk. "Sir, William Ryan's visit isn't a coincidence," Harrington said without preamble. "Intelligence flagged unusual data transfers from Chesapeake's secure servers last night. Massive downloads of training protocols, personnel files, and tactical assessments. Can we trace the breach? It was sophisticated, routed through multiple proxy servers." Harrington pushed a folder across the desk. "But the timing is suspicious. Ryan announces his visit, and suddenly our systems are compromised." Kate opened the folder, scanning the technical details of the breach. "This level of hacking requires professional expertise." "Exactly. And look at the encryption method." Kate's eyes narrowed as she recognized the pattern. "Soviet era, KGB standard." "Orlov," Harrington said grimly. "He's connecting the dots I've spent decades trying to erase." "What dots, sir?" Harrington sighed heavily, suddenly looking every one of his 68 years. "It's time I told you the full story, Kate, about Berlin, about Orlov, and about what really happened when the wall came down." He moved to a leather chair, gesturing for Kate to sit opposite him. "In 1989, I was running a black ops team tracking Soviet intelligence officers who were destroying evidence as the Eastern Bloc collapsed. We knew that KGB was burning archives, eliminating witnesses, covering their tracks." "Historical cleanup," Kate said. "Standard procedure during regime change." This was more than that. They were hiding something specific, something big. Harrington's eyes grew distant with memory. "My team included Robert Blackwood. He was a young lieutenant, then brilliant at code breaking. He deciphered intercepted communications that led us to a KGB safe house in East Berlin." Kate leaned forward, absorbing every word. Her husband had never shared details of this mission. The safe house contained evidence of Operation Midnight, a deep-cover infiltration program. The Soviets had spent decades placing sleeper agents in American military academies, defense contractors, government offices. Harrington's voice dropped lower. "We discovered that dozens of these agents had completely fabricated backgrounds. They were ghosts created by the KGB's best forger, Viktor Orlov." "But the wall fell. The Soviet Union collapsed," Kate said. "Surely these networks were exposed or dismantled." "Some were, others went dormant. And Orlov," Harrington's face hardened. "Orlov escaped with the complete list of agents. I tracked him to a harbor on the Baltic. We fought. I thought I'd killed him when he fell into the water. But no body was ever recovered." "And you think he survived, that he's activating old networks?" "I think he never stopped." William Ryan founded Ryan Defense in 1991, just after the Soviet collapse. His background before that is suspiciously thin, and his company has secured contracts giving them access to our most sensitive training programs. The implication was staggering. "You suspect Ryan is one of Orlov's agents, that he's been operating for decades." "I can't prove it yet," Harrington admitted, "but the data breach used Orlov's methods, and Ryan's visit provides perfect cover, a legitimate reason to be at Chesapeake while the system is compromised." Kate processed this information, her tactical mind already formulating response options. "What's our next move?" "We accelerate your training program, push the cadets to their limits, see who breaks, who complains." Harrington stood, moving back to the maps on the wall. "Meanwhile, we bait the trap. Let them think we suspect nothing while we monitor for the next breach attempt." "And Ryan's son, could he be involved?" Harrington turned to face her. "That's what you need to find out." Kate nodded, accepting the mission. "I'll start tomorrow. New training protocols, maximum pressure." "Be careful, Kate," Harrington warned. "If Ryan is who I suspect, he's been playing this game longer than you've been alive." "With respect, Admiral," Kate replied, "he hasn't been playing against me." Dawn broke over Chesapeake Naval Academy with a blood-red sky. The cadets of Alpha Squad assembled on the training field, breath misting in the cold morning air. They stood at rigid attention, uncertain what to expect, but knowing it wouldn't be pleasant. Commander Blackwood had promised them a new training regimen. "One you'll remember," she'd said with a grim smile that sent chills down their spines. Kate approached accompanied by Lieutenant Mitchell. She wore combat fatigues and carried a heavy rucksack. Mitchell looked uncomfortable, clearly not fully on board with what was about to happen. "Today," Kate announced without preamble, "we begin actual training. Everything before this was kindergarten." She paced before them, evaluating each face. "You think you know what stress is. You think you understand combat pressure. You don't, but you will." With a nod to Mitchell, who reluctantly began distributing equipment, Kate continued, "Welcome to the Shark Tank. For the next 72 hours, you will eat, sleep, and breathe as a unit under constant threat. No schedules, no predictability, no rest when you expect it." The cadets exchanged nervous glances as they received their gear, heavy rucksacks, training rifles, and sealed mission packets. "Your first evolution begins now," Kate announced. "Full gear, 5-mile run to Breakwater Point. Mission brief will be provided upon arrival. Any cadet not arriving within 45 minutes will cause the entire squad to restart. Move." The cadets took off at a steady pace, the weight of their packs immediately apparent. Kate fell in alongside them, carrying the same load. Mitchell followed in a training vehicle, looking increasingly concerned about the intensity. By mile 3, the squad's formation had begun to fragment. 2 cadets lagged behind, their faces red with exertion. James maintained a steady pace at the front, his face set with determination. Ryan kept pace just behind him, refusing to show weakness. Kate observed the developing group dynamics with a professional eye. Who stepped up to encourage struggling teammates? Who focused only on their own performance? These patterns revealed character more honestly than any classroom exercise. As they approached mile 4, one cadet, Matthews, the smallest in the squad, began to falter. His pace slowed dramatically, his breathing labored. The others continued forward, focused on making the time requirement, all except James, who dropped back to Matthew's side. "Come on," Kate heard her son say. "Lock it in. We finish together." Ryan, noticing James's absence from the lead group, hesitated, then made a decision that surprised Kate. He circled back as well. "10 minutes to cut off," Ryan said tersely. "We're not restarting because of you." But instead of just verbal pressure, he positioned himself on Matthew's other side. Together, James and Ryan half-carried their struggling teammate forward. They reached Breakwater Point with 2 minutes to spare, the entire squad intact. Kate allowed nothing to show on her face, but internally she noted the unexpected cooperation between James and Ryan. Perhaps there was hope for these cadets after all. "Mission brief," she announced once they had gathered. "Infiltration exercise. Your objective: retrieve the target package from the abandoned boathouse 1 mile offshore, then exfiltrate undetected." She pointed to the small island visible across the bay. "Standard RHIP boats are available at the dock. Be advised, the area between here and the objective is designated hostile territory. Opposition forces will attempt to intercept." The opposition forces were actually instructors from another department equipped with training weapons that fired painful but non-lethal marking rounds. The cadets would face real consequences for tactical errors. "Ryan, you're squad leader for this evolution," Kate announced, watching carefully for her son's reaction. James maintained his composure, accepting the decision without visible resentment. "Questions?" Kate asked. Ryan stepped forward. "Rules of engagement, Commander. If engaged by opposition, you may return fire. 1 hit means you're wounded and must be evacuated by teammates. 3 hits and you're combat ineffective." Ryan nodded, already formulating his approach. Kate could see his mind working. This was his element. For all his arrogance, the young man possessed genuine tactical intelligence. "You have 30 minutes to plan," Kate concluded. "Execute when ready." She stepped back, allowing Ryan to gather the squad for planning. Lieutenant Mitchell approached, his expression troubled. "This is beyond standard training parameters," he muttered. "Dean Marshall will have questions." "Let him question," Kate replied evenly. "These cadets need to understand that combat doesn't follow comfortable academic guidelines." Mitchell's jaw tightened. "There's pushing them, and then there's setting them up to fail." Kate turned to him, her voice low and intense. Lieutenant, when I was in Kandahar, my team was trapped for 3 days behind enemy lines with no support and limited ammunition. We survived because our training pushed us past what we thought possible. She held his gaze steadily. I'm not setting them up to fail. I'm preparing them to succeed when failure means death. Something in her words seemed to reach Mitchell. His posture shifted slightly, becoming less defensive. I served in Desert Storm, he said quietly. Combat support mostly, never special operations. Kate's assessment of him adjusted. Perhaps his resistance wasn't just wounded pride or territoriality. Perhaps it stemmed from the natural hesitation of someone who recognized the vast gulf between conventional military experience and the shadowy world of special operations. Different roles, same team, she offered, extending an olive branch. Your experience still matters, Lieutenant. Mitchell nodded, accepting the gesture for what it was. The cadets respect you, he admitted. Even Ryan, though he'd never say it. Respect is a start, Kate replied. Trust is what they need to develop. They watched as Ryan deployed the squad in a tight circle using a stick to draw formations in the sand. His planning was methodical, considering multiple approach vectors and contingencies. James contributed actively without trying to undermine Ryan's authority. They're adapting, Kate observed, working together despite personal differences. Trial by fire, Mitchell acknowledged. It works. 30 minutes later, Alpha Squad executed their mission. Kate and Mitchell observed from a distance using binoculars to track their progress. The cadets moved with surprising discipline, maintaining proper intervals and communications protocols. When opposition forces engaged them near the shoreline, they responded with coordinated covering fire and tactical retreats. Not perfect. 2 cadets took wounds requiring evacuation, but far better than Kate had expected. Ryan demonstrated genuine leadership ability, adjusting his strategy when the original approach proved untenable. James showed impressive initiative without overstepping his role in the command structure. The squad successfully retrieved the target package, a sealed container with coded documents, and returned to the rally point within the specified time frame. As they debriefed the exercise, Kate noticed a subtle change in the squad's demeanor. The artificial hierarchy that had existed before, based on family connections and swagger, had begun to reshape itself around demonstrated competence. Even Ryan seemed to view his teammates differently, with genuine respect rather than mere tolerance. Solid performance, Kate concluded. Not great, but solid. We'll break down the details later. She checked her watch. You have 15 minutes to hydrate and eat. Next evolution begins at 1300. As the cadets collapsed gratefully onto the ground, reaching for water bottles and energy bars, Kate's secure phone vibrated. A text from Harrington. Package delivered. Confirm receipt. The cryptic message used their predetermined code. Translation. The system had detected another attempted data breach. The trap was set. Now they needed to see who would take the bait. Kate composed her reply carefully. Package received, proceeding as planned. She scanned the exhausted cadets, wondering which of them might be unknowingly involved in something far more dangerous than training exercises. Ryan was the obvious suspect given his father's connections, but Kate had learned long ago that the obvious choice was rarely the correct one in counterintelligence matters. As if sensing her scrutiny, Ryan looked up, meeting her gaze with an unreadable expression. Was that determination she saw in his eyes? Resentment, or something else entirely? Kate turned away, moving toward the command vehicle where Mitchell was preparing for the next exercise. She couldn't afford to fixate on Ryan. The threat could come from anywhere, even sources they hadn't yet considered. The day progressed through a series of increasingly demanding exercises. By nightfall, the cadets were operating on pure willpower, their bodies exhausted but their minds still sharp from the constant pressure. Kate pushed them relentlessly, watching for breaking points, for any sign of unusual behavior or communication. As darkness fell completely, she finally called a halt. Set up defensive positions and establish watch rotation, she ordered. 4 hours rest, then we move again. The cadets practically collapsed as they established their small encampment, their movements slow and pained, but still disciplined. Kate stepped away, ostensibly to confer with Mitchell, but actually to check in with Harrington. Her satellite phone connected after several seconds of encryption handshaking. Status, Harrington asked without preamble. Squad is performing above expectations, Kate reported. No anomalous behavior observed. The data breach was more sophisticated than we anticipated, Harrington said, his voice tight with concern. They weren't just after training at protocols this time. They accessed personnel files, specifically yours and mine. Kate absorbed this with a chill of apprehension. They're identifying who knows about the investigation. Exactly, which means our timeline just accelerated. Harrington paused. There's something else. William Ryan has requested a demonstration of the new combat simulation system tomorrow. He's bringing a technical team to assess integration requirements. Perfect cover for extracting more data, Kate observed. Or worse. Harrington's voice dropped lower. Intelligence intercepted fragments of a communication using the old Venona cipher. The words Black Widow appeared multiple times. Kate's blood ran cold. That was my call sign in Afghanistan. Yes, they know exactly who you are, Kate, and they're specifically tracking you. Harrington's concern was palpable even over the secure line. I'm sending additional security teams, but they won't arrive until tomorrow afternoon. I'll accelerate the training program, Kate decided. Keep the cadets isolated and under direct observation. If someone's communicating with outside contacts, they'll have to break protocol to do it. Agreed, and Kate, Harrington hesitated. Watch your back. If Orloff is involved, this is personal for him. Very personal. Understood, sir. Kate ended the call and stood motionless for a moment, letting the cool night air clear her head. The mission parameters had changed. This was no longer just about identifying security weaknesses or disciplinary issues. It was about uncovering a potential decades-long infiltration of America's military training systems, and she was now directly in the crosshairs. As she returned to the encampment, Kate noticed James sitting slightly apart from the others, his face illuminated by starlight. He looked up as she approached, concern evident in his expression. "Everything okay?" he asked quietly. Kate considered how much to share. Operational security demanded discretion, but maternal instinct pushed her toward warning her son. Before she could decide, a commotion erupted from the main group. Two cadets were engaged in a heated argument that threatened to become physical. Ryan and Matthews, the same cadet who had struggled during the run. Kate moved quickly to intervene, but James beat her to it. "Stand down," James ordered, positioning himself between them. "What the hell is wrong with you two?" Ryan's face was flushed with anger. "I caught him using his phone, against direct orders." Matthews looked terrified. "I was just checking the time." "Bullshit," Ryan snarled. "You were typing something." Kate stepped into the circle, her presence immediately commanding attention. "Phone, now." She extended her hand toward Matthews, who reluctantly surrendered his device. The screen showed a text message, composition window. The partial message read, "Tell Dad I can't make weekend Liberty, training extended to..." Kate felt a complex mixture of relief and continued suspicion. The message appeared innocent enough, but could easily be a cover for something else. "No electronic communications" was a direct order, Cadet Matthews. "Yes, Commander. I'm sorry, I just..." "Save it," Kate cut him off. "You've just volunteered for first watch, 4 hours starting now." She pocketed the phone, noting Matthews' expression of resigned acceptance. If he was involved in something nefarious, he hid it well. Ryan watched the exchange with an intensity that struck Kate as unusual. Was his anger at Matthews' genuine concern for protocol, or something else? Was he watching to see how Kate handled potential security breaches? "The rest of you sleep while you can," Kate ordered. "And to be crystal clear, any electronic device used without direct authorization will result in immediate dismissal from the program. No exceptions." As the cadets settled into their sleeping bags, Kate positioned herself where she could observe the entire group. Mitchell approached, offering a steaming cup from his thermos. "Coffee?" he asked. "Real stuff, not that instant garbage." Kate accepted gratefully, the warmth of the cup comforting against the chilly night air. "Thank you, Lieutenant." Mitchell settled beside her, his voice low. "You've got them on edge. Even Ryan seems rattled." "Good," Kate replied simply. They sat in companionable silence for a few minutes, watching the cadets gradually succumb to exhaustion. Finally, Mitchell spoke again. "There's something I should have told you earlier," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "About Neptune Spear." Kate turned to him, surprised. Neptune Spear had been the code name for the operation that killed Osama bin Laden. a highly classified mission that only a handful of people knew the complete details of. I was support staff, Mitchell continued, communications relay on the USS Carl Vinson. I never saw combat, but I heard your voice on the channel that night. He met her eyes directly. I knew who you were the moment you arrived at Chesapeake, Tata. I just couldn't say anything because of the classification level. Kate studied him carefully, reassessing everything she knew about Lieutenant Alexander Mitchell. Why tell me now? Mitchell looked away toward the sleeping cadets. Because whatever's happening here goes beyond training issues. I can sense it. He turned back to her. I've served the Navy faithfully for 17 years, Commander. If there's something threatening these cadets, threatening this academy, I want to help. Kate considered her options. Mitchell could be a valuable ally, or he could be feeding her a convincing story to gain her trust. In counterintelligence, trust was a luxury rarely afforded. I appreciate that, Lieutenant, she said carefully. For now, the best help you can provide is maintaining the training schedule and observing the cadets closely. Any unusual behavior, any breach of protocol, no matter how small, I need to know immediately. Mitchell nodded, accepting the non-answer for what it was. Yes, Commander. As he moved away to check the perimeter, Kate turned her attention back to the cadets. James had positioned his sleeping bag near Ryan's, the two young men, apparently having reached some form of truce. Matthew stood stiffly at his watch post, occasionally scanning the darkness with night vision goggles. Everything seemed normal, and that Kate knew from bitter experience was precisely when you should be most alert. She settled in for a long night, her senses hyper-aware of every sound, every movement. Somewhere out there, the enemy was moving pieces into position. The data breaches, the coded messages, William Ryan's convenient visit, all pointed to an operation reaching its critical phase. Tomorrow would bring Ryan and his technical team to Chesapeake. Tomorrow would reveal whether Admiral Harrington's Cold War ghosts were real or imagined. Tomorrow would determine if decades of infiltration would finally bear fruit. And Kate Blackwood, sitting alone in the darkness, while those under her protection slept, made a silent promise to herself and to the country she had sworn to defend. Tomorrow the hunters would become the hunted. The trap was set. The bait was placed. Now all that remained was to see who would be desperate or confident enough to take it. Dawn broke over Chesapeake Naval Academy with ominous gray clouds gathering on the horizon. The first faint rumble of thunder echoed across the bay as Alpha Squad returned from their final night exercise, their faces etched with exhaustion, but also something else, pride. 72 hours of continuous training had transformed them. Where there had once been arrogance, there was now quiet confidence. Where there had been rivalry, there was grudging respect. Commander Kate Blackwood watched them approach, her experienced eye, noting their improved formation, their vigilant scanning of surroundings even though they were back on academy grounds. They moved differently now, like warriors rather than students. Stand down, she called as they assembled before her. Training cycle complete. The cadets' shoulders sagged with relief, but they maintained their positions awaiting further instructions. Even Thomas Ryan, whose eyes were rimmed with fatigue, stood tall. Showers fresh uniforms, then assembly in the Tactical Operations Center at 0900, Kate ordered. Admiral Harrington will address the squad. As the cadets dispersed, Lieutenant Mitchell approached Kate, his expression troubled. You've been up all night, he observed. You should get some rest before the demonstration. Kate shook her head slightly. No time. Ryan's technical team arrives in 3 hours. Mitchell lowered his voice. Commander, I'm not blind. This isn't just about training anymore. Something's happening and these cadets are caught in the middle of it. Kate studied him carefully. Mitchell had proven himself reliable during the intensive training cycle, supporting her methods despite his initial reservations. But trust was a luxury she couldn't afford, not with stakes this high. Your concern is noted, Lieutenant, she replied neutrally. Focus on preparing the demonstration area according to protocol. Mitchell's jaw tightened at the dismissal, but he nodded and moved away. Kate watched him go, regretting the necessity of keeping him at arm's length. In combat, she'd learned to rely on teammates implicitly, but this wasn't combat. This was counterintelligence where trust could be fatal. Her secure phone vibrated with a message from Harrington. Security team delayed, weather system moving in. Proceed with caution. Kate glanced at the darkening sky. The approaching storm would provide perfect cover for whatever operation was unfolding. Reduced visibility, communication, interference. Legitimate excuses for power fluctuations, all tactical advantages for an infiltration team. She typed a brief acknowledgement, then headed toward the main administration building to meet Harrington. They needed to finalize their trap before William Ryan's arrival. The Tactical Operations Center was a fortified room in the Academy's basement designed to withstand everything from cyber attacks to direct bombardment. Admiral Harrington stood before a wall of monitors, his weathered face illuminated by their blue glow. He looked up as Kate entered. "Commander," he acknowledged, dismissing the two security personnel with a nod. When they were alone, his formal demeanor softened slightly. "You look like hell, Kate." "Thank you, sir," she replied with the ghost of a smile. "Compliments like that keep me humble." Harrington snorted, then gestured to the monitors. "Our surveillance picked up increased encrypted communications overnight. Someone's very interested in today's demonstration." Kate studied the data scrolling across the screens. "Have we identified the source?" "Multiple access points, all carefully masked. But the timing coincides with your training day exercises." Harrington pulled up a satellite map showing the Academy grounds. "Someone was reporting on your movements." "One of the cadets," Kate said grimly, "most likely." Harrington's expression was grave. "The question is, do they know what they're involved in? Are they willing participants or unwitting pawns?" Kate thought of Ryan of Matthews with his unauthorized phone use of the dozen other cadets who'd been under her constant observation for 3 days. She'd seen no definitive evidence of treachery, but then she wouldn't, not if they'd been properly trained. "The trap is still our best option," she concluded. "We feed them exactly what they want, then follow the data." Harrington nodded. "The demonstration simulator is loaded with specially marked files, training protocols, personnel records, tactical assessments. Each document contains a unique digital signature that we can track if they're accessed or transmitted. And Ryan's technical team will provide the perfect extraction mechanism." Kate added the plan, crystallizing. "Exactly." Harrington moved to a secure cabinet and unlocked it with his personal code. From within, he removed what appeared to be a standard-issue sidearm. "Take this. It's loaded with non-lethal rounds, but it will stop someone if necessary." Kate accepted the weapon, checking it with practiced hands before securing it in her thigh holster beneath her uniform jacket. "I've also prepared an evacuation protocol for the cadets," Harrington continued. "If things go sideways, Lieutenant Mitchell will lead them to the secondary fallback position at North Point Bunker." "Mitchell?" Kate questioned, surprised by the choice. "I've had him thoroughly vetted," Harrington explained. "His record is impeccable, and his connection to Neptune's spear checks out. We need someone the cadets will follow without question if we're occupied elsewhere." Kate accepted this with a nod. "And James?" Harrington's eyes softened momentarily. "Your son will be with the others. Mitchell has specific instructions to ensure his safety." The Admiral's secure phone chimed with an incoming message. He checked it, his expression darkening. "Ryan's convoy just passed the main gate. They're 20 minutes early." Kate checked her weapon once more. "Then we'd better greet our guests." The cadets of Alpha Squad, showered and in fresh uniforms, assembled in the Tactical Operations Center at exactly Euro 900. They stood at attention as Admiral Harrington addressed them, his voice carrying the weight of decades of command. "For the past 3 days, you've been subjected to the most intensive training program ever implemented at this academy," he began, pacing before them. "Some of you may have wondered why. Why push you beyond conventional limits? Why test not just your skills, but your character under extreme pressure?" He paused, his gaze sweeping over each face. "Because today, you face a different kind of test. One that will not measure your physical endurance or tactical knowledge, but your loyalty and judgment." A ripple of confusion passed through the cadets. James Blackwood's brow furrowed as he glanced briefly at his mother standing impassively beside the Admiral. "In 1 hour, you will participate in a demonstration of a new combat simulation system," Harrington continued. "Observers will include William Ryan, CEO of Ryan Defense, and his technical team. Your performance will be evaluated not by Academy standards, but by those who develop the systems our warfighters depend on." He let that sink in before delivering the key instruction. "During this demonstration, you may observe or hear things that seem unusual. You may receive instructions that contradict your training. You may be offered opportunities that tempt your ambition." His voice hardened. "Remember your oath, cadets. Remember who you serve. The cryptic warning hung in the air as Harrington dismissed them to prepare for the demonstration. As they filed out, Kate noticed Ryan lingering behind his expression, troubled. When the room had emptied except for Kate, Harrington, and Ryan, the cadet approached them. "Permission to speak freely, sir," Ryan requested formally. Harrington nodded. "Granted." Ryan straightened. "My father doesn't make personal visits for routine demonstrations. Whatever's happening today isn't standard procedure." Kate and Harrington exchanged glances. "What are you saying, Cadet?" Harrington prompted. Ryan's face tightened with what appeared to be genuine conflict. "Sir, my father has expectations about my role in his company, about information I might access through my position here." Kate felt a surge of adrenaline. "Has he asked you to provide such information, Cadet?" Ryan hesitated, then nodded once. "Nothing classified. Academy routines, training schedules, personnel rotations. I thought it was just his way of staying connected to my progress." "But now you're not so sure," Harrington observed. "No, sir." Ryan's expression hardened. 3 days in the Shark Tank changes your perspective, makes you question loyalties you took for granted. Kate studied the young man carefully, looking for any sign of deception. She saw only the familiar struggle of a son trying to reconcile his duty with his family ties, a struggle she recognized all too well. "Why tell us this now?" she asked. Ryan met her gaze directly. "Because whatever's happening, I won't be part of it. Not anymore." He swallowed hard. "I'm a cadet of the United States Naval Academy first. My father's son second." The sincerity in his voice was compelling, but Kate had seen too many convincing performances to take it at face value. This could easily be a calculated move to position Ryan above suspicion. "We appreciate your candor," Cadet Harrington said carefully. "For now, proceed as normal. Join your squad and prepare for the demonstration." After Ryan departed, Harrington turned to Kate. "What do you think?" "Could be genuine," she admitted. "Could also be a masterful deflection, especially if he suspects we're onto him. Either way, it confirms our suspicions about William Ryan." Harrington checked his watch. "They'll be at the simulation center in 20 minutes. Time to set our pieces on the board." The Combat Simulation Center occupied a converted hangar at the Academy's northern edge. Inside, state-of-the-art virtual reality systems allowed cadets to experience combat scenarios with unprecedented realism. For today's demonstration, the main system had been updated with Ryan Defense's newest neural feedback components technology that supposedly enhanced training by simulating physical sensations. Kate supervised as Alpha Squad prepared, checking their specialized VR gear and reviewing the demonstration scenario. James approached as she inspected the system interfaces. "Mom," he said quietly, using the familial address now that the other cadets had moved out of earshot. "What's really going on?" Kate hesitated, torn between operational security and maternal instinct. "A security concern," she finally said. "That's all I can tell you right now." James studied her face, reading the tension there. "It involves Ryan's father, doesn't it? And that's why you've been watching Thomas so closely." Sometimes Kate forgot how perceptive her son was, how much of his father's intelligence he had inherited. "James," she said carefully, "I need you to trust me today. No matter what happens, no matter what you see or hear, whilst that I'm doing my job." He nodded slowly. "I always have." The simple statement caught her off guard, warming something that had been cold inside her for too long. Before she could respond, Lieutenant Mitchell appeared at the hangar entrance. "They're here," he announced. 5 vehicles, more personnel than expected." Kate squeezed her son's shoulder once, then returned to her professional demeanor. "Positions, everyone. Remember the protocol." William Ryan entered the simulation center like a man who expected to own it someday. Confident, commanding his expensive suit, incongruous among the uniforms. Behind him came a dozen men and women in Ryan Defense polo shirts carrying equipment cases and tablet computers. "Admiral Harrington," Ryan greeted expansively. "Commander Blackwood, quite the weather we're having. The storm front nearly forced us to reschedule." "We appreciate your perseverance, Mr. Ryan," Harrington replied smoothly. "Your technical team is larger than anticipated." Ryan waved dismissively. "The neural feedback components require specialized calibration. Delicate work." His eyes found his son among the cadets. "Thomas, you're looking well. Commander Blackwood's training agrees with you." Young Ryan nodded stiffly. Yes, sir. It's been educational. A ghost of a smile touched William Ryan's lips. I'm sure it has. He turned back to Harrington. Shall we begin? My team needs to set up their equipment. As the Ryan defense personnel dispersed throughout the facility, Kate noticed their movements were oddly coordinated for civilian technicians. They positioned themselves near key access points, computer terminals, and security cameras with a precision that raised her internal alarms. Curious about the technical aspects, Commander Ryan asked, noticing her observation. Always, Kate replies evenly, especially neural feedback technology. It's still experimental as I understand it. Not anymore. Yeah. Ryan's smile didn't reach his eyes. We've made remarkable advances. Today's demonstration will prove that conventional training methods, like yours, are becoming obsolete. The challenge in his voice was unmistakable. Kate merely nodded, maintaining her professional facade while mentally calculating distances to exits, weapons, and potential cover. The storm outside had intensified, rain now lashing against the hangar's metal roof and sheets. Perfect cover for whatever was coming. The demonstration began with Alpha Squad entering the virtual environment, a simulated urban warfare scenario in a Middle Eastern setting. The cadets moved through the digital landscape with the improved discipline Kate had instilled, clearing corners and coordinating movements with hand signals. William Ryan observed from a control station, occasionally commenting to Harrington about system capabilities, while his technical team continued their work around the periphery of the room. To casual observation, they appeared to be monitoring the simulation's performance. Kate, however, noticed their frequent access to systems unrelated to the demonstration. The trap was being sprung, just not the one they had set. Kate caught Harrington's eye and tapped her wrist twice, their predetermined signal for accelerating the timeline. He nodded almost imperceptibly, then addressed Ryan. Perhaps we should evaluate the neural feedback components now, Harrington suggested. That's the primary innovation after all. Ryan checked his watch, then nodded. Excellent idea, Admiral. We've prepared a special demonstration module for just that purpose. He gestured to one of his technicians, who initiated a new program sequence. Inside the simulation, the cadets suddenly found themselves in a different scenario, a classified SEAL infiltration protocol that Kate recognized immediately as one used in actual operations. This is quite detailed, Harrington observed carefully, almost identical to our operational procedures. We spare no expense in research and development, Ryan replied smoothly. Authenticity is crucial for effective training. A sudden power fluctuation made the lights flicker momentarily. Thunder boomed overhead as the storm reached its peak intensity. One of Ryan's technicians approached him, whispering something that made his expression tighten. Minor technical issue, Ryan explains, and the storm is affecting our uplink. Kate didn't believe him for a second. The technical issue had to be related to their digital trap, the tracking signatures embedded in the files. Ryan's team had discovered them. The atmosphere in the room shifted subtly but unmistakably. Ryan's technicians moved with new purpose, positioning themselves near exits and access panels. Inside the simulation, the cadets continued their exercise, unaware of the tension building in the real world around them. Kate's hand dropped casually to her side, inches from her concealed weapon. She caught Mitchell's eye across the room and gave a tiny nod. He understood immediately, moving to a position closer to the simulator controls where the cadets could be quickly extracted if necessary. The facade was crumbling by the second. Kate could see it in Ryan's eyes, the calculation, the realization that his operation had been compromised. But instead of retreat, she saw something more dangerous: decision. Admiral, Ryan said, his voice now stripped of its corporate polish. I believe we've seen enough of the demonstration. Perhaps we should move to your office to discuss the contract details. It was a transparent attempt to separate Harrington from the security of the simulation center. Kate tensed, ready to intervene, but the Admiral was already responding. I think we'll conclude the formal portion right here, Harrington said firmly. In fact, I believe Naval Criminal Investigative Service would be interested in reviewing the data your team has been extracting from our systems. The pretense shattered. Ryan's face hardened into something entirely different, cold, calculating, dangerous. Always the tactical thinker, James. That's why you were such a formidable opponent in Berlin. Harrington didn't flinch at the reference. Hello, Victor. I wondered if you'd finally show your true face. The revelation hung in the air like an electrical charge. William Ryan, or Victor Orloff, smiled thinly. 36 years I've waited for this moment. he said, his American accent now tinged with Slavic undertones. Rebuilding my identity, positioning my assets, penetrating your precious institutions. His eyes gleamed with triumph and hatred. The Cold War never ended, James, it merely evolved. Kate assessed the tactical situation with rapid precision. 8 of Ryan's technicians had subtly repositioned to block exits. 2 others were accessing control panels likely to disable security systems. The cadets remained in the simulation, effectively blind to the confrontation unfolding around them. "It's over, Orloff," Harrington stated calmly. "We've been tracking your operation for months. Every file you've stolen has been tagged and traced. Every communication intercepted." Orloff laughed, a cold, harsh sound. "You always were a convincing liar, James. But we both know the truth. Your security teams are grounded by the storm. Your communications are already compromised. And in exactly 2 minutes, this entire facility will experience a complete systems failure." His smile widened, "including the life support regulators." Kate realized with horror what he meant. The neural feedback components installed in the simulation system could deliver lethal electrical charges directly to the cadets' nervous systems if the safety protocols were disabled. James, her son, was in that simulator. "Commander Blackwood," Orloff addressed her directly, "the legendary Black Widow. Your reputation in Afghanistan was quite impressive." His eyes narrowed. "But mothers make predictable operators. Too emotional, too attached." Kate's training took over, suppressing the fear that threatened to cloud her judgment. "Lieutenant Mitchell," she called out clearly. "Emergency Protocol Alpha. Now." Mitchell reacted instantly, slapping the emergency shutdown on the simulator and activating the Academy's alert system. Sirens wailed as the VR system began its emergency extraction sequence. Chaos erupted. Orloff's team moved with military precision, drawing concealed weapons. Kate drew her sidearm in one fluid motion, shoving Harrington toward cover behind a control console as bullets shattered equipment around them. "Get the cadets out!" Kate shouted to Mitchell as she returned fire, her non-lethal rounds hitting one attacker in the chest and sending him crashing to the floor, temporarily paralyzed. Inside the simulator, warning lights flashed as the emergency protocols engaged. The cadets began removing their VR gear, confusion turning to alarm as they emerged into the firefight. "Take cover," James shouted to his fellow cadets, showing the leadership Kate had always known he possessed. They scrambled behind equipment racks and support columns as bullets ricocheted around them. Thomas Ryan emerged from the simulator, his face registering shock as he saw his father directing the attack. "Dad," he called out in disbelief, "what are you doing?" Orloff turned toward his son, momentary surprise on his face. "Stay down, Thomas. This doesn't concern you." "Doesn't concern me, Ishrami," young Ryan's voice cracked with emotion. "You're attacking the academy, my academy." "Our legacy is greater than this place," Orloff replied coldly. "Everything I've built was for you to continue." Understanding dawned on Thomas Ryan's face, horrible world-shattering understanding. "You're not who I thought you were," he said, his voice hollow. "None of us are," Orloff responded. He gestured to one of his men. "Get him out of here." The operative moved toward Thomas, but James intercepted him, delivering a precise strike to the throat that dropped the man instantly. Kate felt a surge of pride even amidst the chaos, her son applying the techniques she'd taught him years ago. Harrington had worked his way to a secondary control panel and was frantically trying to restore the security systems. Kate provided covering fire, her position increasingly tenuous as Orloff's team concentrated their attack. "The backup generator is compromised," Harrington called out. "We need to manually reset the mainframe in the server room." Kate assessed the situation in an instant. The server room was across the open area, a deadly gauntlet under current conditions. "Cover me," she shouted to Mitchell, who had positioned himself with 2 cadets behind a heavy equipment rack, all armed with improvised weapons. "Commander, it's suicide," Mitchell protested. "That's my son in there, Lieutenant," Kate replied to her voice iron. "Cover me." Mitchell nodded grimly, then laid down suppressive fire along with the cadets. Kate burst from cover, moving in the zigzag pattern that had saved her life countless times in combat zones. Bullets tracked her progress, shattering equipment and splintering the floor at her heels. She was halfway to the server room when Orloff himself stepped into her path, a sleek pistol aimed at her chest. "Commander Blackwood," he said with cold satisfaction. The woman who broke the seal barrier. How historic. Kate didn't hesitate. She dropped into a roll coming up inside his firing arc. Her elbow connected with his wrist, knocking his aim wide as a bullet discharged past her ear. The close-quarters combat techniques she had mastered over decades deployed automatically strike counter-disarm. But Orlov was no amateur. He blocked her follow-up strike and countered with surprising speed for a man his age, catching her with a vicious blow to the ribs that sent shards of pain through her side. Spetsnaz training, he explained with a cold smile as they circled each other. Before your time, perhaps, but still effective. Kate controlled her breathing, ignoring the pain. The problem with old techniques, she replied, is they don't evolve. She feinted left, then drove forward with a modernized Sistema technique that caught Orlov by surprise, a lightning combination targeting nerve clusters unique to SEAL close combat training. He staggered backward, momentarily disoriented. Kate pressed her advantage, delivering a precision strike to his solar plexus that doubled him over. Another to the back of his neck dropped him to his knees. She could have ended it there. A final strike would have rendered him unconscious. But unlike Berlin all those years ago, this wasn't a kill mission. It's over, Orlov, she said, standing over him. The operation, the infiltration, all of it. Surrender now. Orlov looked up, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. For a moment, his gaze shifted to something behind her. A warning flashed through Kate's combat instincts, but before she could react, a searing pain exploded across her shoulder. One of Orlov's operatives had flanked her, his bullet tearing through muscle and tissue. Kate stumbled, fighting to remain conscious, as Orlov regained his feet. The great weakness of American operatives, he said, retrieving his weapon. You always expect a fair fight. He aimed at her head, victory in his eyes, but the shot never came. Thomas Ryan crashed into his father from behind, driving him to the ground with desperate force. No more, he shouted, struggling to restrain the older man. Orlov's face contorted with rage and disbelief. You would betray your own father, your legacy. My legacy isn't yours to define, Thomas replied through gritted teeth. The momentary distraction was all Kate needed. Despite the agony in her shoulder, she surged forward, delivering a knockout blow to Orlov's temple. He slumped unconscious, his son still holding him. Thomas looked up at Kate, his eyes filled with confusion and pain. Commander, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Kate nodded, believing him despite everything. The raw anguish in his face couldn't be faked. Across the room, the tide had turned. Mitchell and the cadets had neutralized several of Orlov's team, while Harrington had managed to reach a secure line to call in reinforcements. James fought alongside his fellow cadets, displaying the calm courage Kate had always hoped he possessed. The servers still needed to be reset to restore full security functions. Kate staggered toward the server room, each step sending waves of pain through her injured shoulder. Blood soaked her uniform, but she refused to yield to weakness. Inside the server room, she found two of Orlov's operatives already downloading critical data. They turned at her entrance, weapons raised. Kate didn't give them time to fire. With her remaining strength, she executed the room-clearing technique that had become legendary among SEAL teams, a fluid combination of movement and precision strikes that left both men incapacitated in seconds. The mainframe console beckoned. Kate's vision blurred as she reached for the emergency reset sequence. Her fingers, slick with her own blood, fumbled over the keypad. The pain was becoming unbearable, darkness creeping at the edges of her consciousness. Mom. James appeared at her side, supporting her weight as she sagged. I've got you. Together, they initiated the reset sequence. Lights flickered, then stabilized as primary systems came back online. Security protocols re-engaged, locking down the facility. The others, Kate managed to ask. Contained, James assured her. Mitchell and the squad have them surrounded. Admiral Harrington called in a QRF team from Norfolk. They'll be here any minute. Kate nodded weakly, the adrenaline that had sustained her beginning to ebb. You did well, she told her son. Your father would be proud. James's eyes glistened. He'd be proud of both of us. As medical personnel rushed in and the immediate crisis subsided, Kate found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. From that first confrontation in the training yard, a gun to her head, and arrogant laughter all around, to this moment of truth where character revealed itself under fire. The cadets had learned their lesson. Not from textbooks or simulations, but from life itself, from watching a woman they had once mocked stand against impossible odds to protect them. from seeing what real courage looked like when bullets flew and lives hung in the balance. They had learned why you never threaten a Navy SEAL, not because of superior training or tactical advantages, but because of what lay beneath the surface, the unbreakable will, the absolute commitment to mission and team, the readiness to sacrifice everything for what matters most. As medics stabilized her wound and prepared for evacuation, Kate caught sight of Thomas Ryan sitting alone, his world shattered by the truth about his father. Despite everything, she felt a surge of compassion for the young man who had made the hardest choice of all to stand against his own blood for what was right. "James," she said quietly to her son, "go to him. He needs someone now." James hesitated, then nodded in understanding what she was asking. He crossed to Thomas and sat beside him, offering not words but simple presence, the kind of quiet strength that defined true leadership. Admiral Harrington approached Kate's stretcher, his weathered face showing relief and concern. "You know," he said with the ghost of a smile, "this wasn't exactly the training evaluation I had in mind when I sent you here." Kate managed a weak laugh despite the pain. "Mission accomplished nonetheless, sir. We identified the security weakness." "And more," Harrington agreed soberly. "Orlov's network extends beyond Ryan defense. This is just the beginning of unraveling a decades-long infiltration. Those cadets will help build the defense against it," Kate said, looking at the young men who had proven themselves under fire. "They've seen the threat firsthand now. They understand what's at stake." Harrington followed her gaze. They had a good teacher. As medical personnel prepared to move her, Kate caught a final glimpse of James and Thomas sitting together, adversaries transformed into allies by fire and truth. The other cadets gathered around them, their former hierarchies dissolved by shared danger. That day changed more than just the trajectory of a training class. It changed the course of young lives. It exposed a decades-old conspiracy. It healed the rift between a mother and son. From that moment on, the cadets of Alpha Squad moved differently, spoke differently, thought differently. They no longer asked who Commander Blackwood was. They focused instead on who they needed to become. And Kate, she never raised her voice again. She didn't need to because they'd already heard the loudest lesson of all, that true strength isn't measured by swagger or intimidation, but by what you do when everything is on the line. In the end, that was the legacy she left at Chesapeake Naval Academy. Not just as the woman who broke the SEAL barrier, but as the commander who showed a new generation what that barrier was made of, not gender or physical prowess, but the unbreakable will to stand between danger and those you're sworn to protect, even if it means facing a gun to your head without flinching.